episode of the Watch Report with me, Jean-Luc Wells. That's right. Clap it up. We're excited. We're making noise everywhere. We are back again with the incomparable, the incredible UFC fan and resident expert, TN Commit. Did I say it right? Commit?
Yeah, TN Commit.
Brother, how you doing, man? How you doing?
Good. I'm happy to be back.
I'm glad I could bring you back on the show. I'm glad you had time to be available. So again, audience, I apologize for the long break. Normally we upload episodes, consistently throughout the week. Just handling some business, getting some stuff moved in the works, trying to make the show bigger and better. You can already see we got ourselves a brand new chair. It's the small things, it's the little things that make this show better and better as time goes on. So we're doing this all just for you. So please, before we start this episode, hit the like on the video, comment your thoughts and opinions, subscribe to the channel, and share it with everybody that you know. And we're also available on all major podcasting platforms. So give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and every other podcast you can think of. If you can't find us there, please tell me, and I'll put my butt there so everybody can see and listen to hopefully my beautiful voice or my horrible voice, whichever one you believe I am. But without further ado, we ain't got no time to waste. Well, this is a combat sports episode, and we are talking about UFC 280. So without further ado, it's time to step into the ring. That's right. Let's get it going. Normally I use it for boxing, but you know what? We're going to make this a multifaceted tool for today. So UFC 280 happened. It was a phenomenal event. And one of the biggest things that happened, of course, was the main event with Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Jake Paul and him fighting down the road. We're also going to, or not down the road, excuse me, fighting against UFC and combat sports legend Anderson Silva. What's going to happen? Who's going to win? Why hasn't this gotten notoriety? Much more, as well as what we're going to talk about currently right now. Peter Yan in a controversial fight against Sean O'Malley. And that's what we're going to open up this whole show with. In a fight that has the UFC community split down the middle. Who in the world actually won this fight? Well, before we even get to that, Tien, how do you feel about this fight when you saw it?
That was a great fight. I was watching it with all my buddies, and I think that was the most exciting fight of the night for me. And I thought it was a great fight because they both had big moments. They both had big significant strikes against each other. And yeah, I can see why. I can see both ends of why you might be able to argue Peter Yan won and why you might be able to argue Sean O'Malley won. And at first, when I was first watching it live, and I heard Bruce Buffer say 29-28 Yan, and I was surprised that it was even a split decision. I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be unanimous. Peter Yan's going to win. And then it turned out being split decision, Sean O'Malley won. And first, what did you think? What did you think about the decision and what did you think of the fight?
Well, for me, I'm similar to you, or rather similar to what I've heard other people tell me. I can understand the discourse between why this decision is so such a hot topic.
Yeah.
And like you said, again, Islam and Charles Oliveira was one of the most anticipated, but this was probably, as a fight, the best competitive fight between the two. It was great. It was phenomenal. Again, Sean O'Malley did what Sean O'Malley does. He is the Sugar Show for a reason. But I think that Peter Yan did enough to win the fight, in my estimation. And the reason why is I understand exactly why. Again, striking is one of the most basic and one of the most pivotal points in any combat sports, especially in the UFC. But the ground game, I think, is really what, in my opinion, gave the edge over why I think Peter Yan should have won the fight versus Oliveira. I get Shane had success on the feet. Absolutely. No question about it. Again, that's why it was hotly contested. But the amount of control when Peter Yan got on the ground in the clinch, I think he did enough to get the win, at least in my estimation. But do you think this brings up, or rather, did you have something to say before I move on?
I would just have to disagree because I think that he did score, I think 6 takedowns he was credited with, and I think it was like a total of like at least 3 minutes of ground control time.
Mm.
You know, and normally, yeah, when you see that stat versus Sean's stat of like 0 takedown and like less than 20 seconds of ground control, if even
Mm.
that, you know, that is a little bit daunting. However, I think from how the referees were judging it and scoring it was in terms of like, what do you do after you get that ground control, you know, and it wasn't like Sean O'Malley was just gonna, sit there and take it. He did make conscientious efforts to, get up, escape, break the clinches.
Mm.
And I rewatched it. I rewatched the fight once, and I was actually pretty impressed by his reaction time to some of the shots that Pidion had on him. Like, I mean, like shooting for takedown.
Yeah.
Like that's what I meant. And so when you look at it in that regard, then you could definitely see how they scored it, for Sean O'Malley, because as Peter Yan also being the #1 contender for that division, I feel like it needs to be more definitive of a win.
Mm.
Get
Yeah.
me? Whereas you know, I'm trying to think of there's been a fight recently where it was something similar, like a big contender. I think it was the Rose Namajunas fight actually. Do you remember that where she barely threw any punches and she won, in like in her mind she was gonna win the fight by scoring a point on the takedown.
Mm.
She got like one takedown before the round was over.
Mm.
Gave it to the opponent because
Yeah.
she's champion, and they in their eyes they needed to see
Mm.
more dominant performance to win the fight. So I think it could have went either way, but when you look at it, I'm just saying if we're looking at it the way I think the refs were looking at it, I could see why they gave it to O'Malley, split decision.
Yeah, it's like again for me. When you touched on dominance as if you're a contender, if you want to win, you want to win in a clear cut fashion. And I get that completely. The rebuttal I would have to that though is even though Jan maybe when he had control and while he wasn't doing much, wasn't the fact that he consistently was able to put O'Malley in a position where he couldn't do anything and just hold him there without giving him any chance to really get out? Wouldn't that equate to some level of okay, I'm controlling the fight. I want like if he wanted it to be a slow, grappling affair, he accomplished that goal wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Coupled with, I mean, again, I think Sean O'Malley was better on the feet, but coupled with the work that he did on the feet as well in his own right in Peter Yan, I don't see why that wouldn't be considered, okay, hey, not only he might have not had as flashy or as well of a stand-up game throughout the tenure of the fight,
Yeah.
but that combined with his just
Taking him down. I see what you're saying, Jean-Luc.
yeah,
Yes.
and it's not even taking him down. It's the fact that he took him down and he didn't while he didn't do anything, he didn't let Sean do anything either. So it was like, I'm in control and I want to sit here. And
so yeah, if we're looking at it that way, then I would agree with you. Then yeah, I think Peter Yan would have won if that's how it was being looked at.
and it brings up a good point. Do you think that again, right now we're in one of the I'll call it one of the, I guess, on the downside of the biggest boom in UFC's popularity, out from Conor McGregor when he was consistently, contending and it was bringing like loads and loads of people in. Yeah. Now you're getting the stable, a more stable fan base, which is phenomenal, which is great. But with that and that whole aspect of, at least in my estimation, Conor McGregor, incredibly flashy. And the way he would finish opponents, everybody was looking for, knockout, or some sort of dramatic, type of fight. Do you think that we have kind of undervalued the ability to consistently have ground control?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a real tough one because I think there's different kinds of ground control.
Mm.
I think when you think about like for example, like Khabib, you know, maybe in like think about the ground control Khabib had when he fought Conor.
Mm.
He's just pounding him, smashing him, you know. Like I think that is decisive ground control. That is indisputable in my eyes, you know. Um, but when I see people just like not, you know, fighting for positions and their skills are pretty equal, so no one is really getting ahead of each other on the ground. I think that's when it, you know, becomes boring to a lot of people. And then, you know, while that's still impressive, you know, when you think about all the technique
Uh-huh.
and skills that have to go into that, that's when it could get undervalued.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I see.
You know,
I see that. I see that. And then, and, you know, unlike, see, again, I'm not as well versed in UFC as you. I'm getting there. I'm working to get there. I'm working to get there.
a lot
And
better
so,
than, you're definitely a lot better than a lot of like novice fans for
okay.
sure.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate it. And I do want to be able to have a deep understanding of the sport. But from my days, or not days, from my love of boxing and striking, I really do understand striking. And
Yes.
with striking, it's the barometer of a boring fight can be, you know, pot shots or light shots versus big shots, or somebody who's able to consistently counter versus somebody who hurts you in the round on a consistent basis. Well, you hurt me, yeah, but I landed 20 more punches. Which one should be valued more in the eyes of the judges? It's a little more clear
That's
cut.
effective
And,
too,
and,
you know, because like I understand that like you landed more punches, but how significant are they? Are they causing damage? You
mm,
know, it's like it's a lot to factor in and account when it's scoring a fight.
yeah,
That
but I wanted to bring that up in terms of contrasting that with grappling, and when a predominantly grappling style fight, if it's not definitive like the big slams of sorts, do you think that the UFC will come up with or should come up with a new way to kind of reinvent how they judge the ground game so that when you have these really technical affairs amongst high value or high ability grapplers, and it seems like it's just neck and neck, we can have a better barometer of okay, which one or what aspects of grappling should we take heed to more?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think that the only way you could really answer that is with the judges being well versed in like different kinds of fighting and grappling. So like jujitsu and wrestling and all those different things so that they can decide on the best decision or outcome for that type of like neck and neck where to the untrained eye it just looks like they're just hugging each other. You're not going to be able to see the technique or you know the strategy or the game plan when it does just look like a lot of like grabbing each other trying to fight for a dominant position.
Mhm.
And then I also do I a rule I really do like is how the referee in the ring can tell them to stand up if there's not enough like going on,
Yeah, no, that is smart.
utilized sooner, I feel like.
Mm. Okay, yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, that's a good perspective. I completely forgot about the ref can tell them, hey, get up and
Yeah,
start over or get active because we ain't
exactly.
having this because you ain't giving the judges nothing to score. Yeah,
Exactly.
what do you like to say?
Because then you make the judges have to score something,
Mm.
and you don't want it to be like, who landed more punches, but maybe they weren't significant, or who landed like who did more strikes on the ground. It's really hard to tell. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that is a tough question that I don't know what the best answer to that would be actually.
that's a
I
shoot.
think the well versed refs is a or officials is like a good way about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's a good way. I mean, hey, maybe I'll get Dana White on here, and we can have that whole not debate, inquiry about whether there should be an updated system. But hey, well, that's down the line. Maybe sooner than you think. Who knows? We'll find out as this show goes on. But
I do really like when Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan, pretty well educated on the different like types of grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu. So they are explaining while they're commentating like what they're doing. I think I'm not sure what the referees, backgrounds are, but I think it'd be good to know like what the referees, backgrounds are and how they usually score fights.
I think some of them, like I think some of the refs were mixed martial artists in some way. I don't know about who, and I don't know about how many, but I do know I remember seeing somebody did have a background.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that could also take into account that maybe they were just a fighter and not necessarily a like specific. I know this type of style, hence I know when somebody's dragging, when somebody's actually having success. So that again, that's a conversation for Dana White on another day if I ever get to it. Hey, maybe we have him sooner than you think. So we'll find out. But moving on to the main event as to UFC 280. Islam Makhachev versus your favorite fighter, Charles Oliveira. And let me tell you something right now. Where's my soundboard? What did I say? What did I say? I said it. I called it. I didn't do it.
You called it a while ago too. You were right and I was wrong. It was still a good fight though. I enjoyed that fight, and I think it's really too bad that the fight before that for Oliveira, there was that whole half a pound missing weight handle, and I think because of that I don't think he gets a rematch because he wasn't champion.
Well,
sometimes whenever the champion loses, they do a rematch.
Understand, if I remember correctly, he was stripped of the title.
Yes.
Get stripped of the title. So this was for the vacant lightweight title. So no, he won't get an immediate rematch.
No, he won't get
because of that. Now he will get back. Don't get it twisted.
I think he's still number one contender though.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so whether he'll get back into the title picture, I don't have a question of. I do not have a question. He'll get his match for the title, whether it's from Makhachev or anybody else. Whoever holds the title by the time he gets called for, hey, you up next, he'll go get there. He will get there. That's not a question. But before we even get to whether he can win once he gets there, let's talk about the fight in and of itself and why he lost that fight. And it was, and this may sound like bragging, I don't care. This is what I said. I said when I was on the show with you, all these hotly contested fights that Charles Oliveira consistently has that makes him one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC. It is hard to sustain that level of spectacle on a consistent basis when you're always in danger. And against somebody like Charles Oliveira, I said that it was going to be, against somebody like Makhachev, it was going to be, if you get in trouble, you may not be able to get out like you normally do. And the consistent pressure that Islam put on him, like he's been doing all these other fights, was not gonna allow for Charles Oliveira to get that motor running to be able to say, okay, I can think my way out. I know exactly what I need to do, because he wasn't going to have the energy. He wasn't going to have the time. And unless he was able to do a precise shot to get him off of him, I didn't think it was going to be enough. And it happened. Again, I'm not rooting for him to lose. Let's not get twisted. I'm not rooting for Charles Oliveira to lose. No, I love him. I love him as a fighter. I love the spectacle. I love watching him be on the brink of seemingly being out and then boom, coming back and just pulling a win out of his butt out of nowhere. It's phenomenal. It is phenomenal. But it's just I think now this fight hopefully showed him, or hopefully will have him kind of try to want to win in dominant fashions early on. So he doesn't have to worry about these type of situations, both in the past and with the most recent loss, where he's got to try to pull a win out of thin air, which, again, a master at doing.
That's why when I saw him in that arm triangle, I was like, oh, he's gonna get out of it. I thought he was gonna get out of it. I was like, oh, that's in there tight, but he's gonna get out of it.
You know what? I did too. I did too. But that speaks to the strength of Makhachev. Because I didn't even think it was locked in terms of that securely. But it was, I think Daniel Cormier said, it was either Cormier or Rogan, one of the two. But they said like just the squeezing strength that Islam inherently has in him it's otherworldly. It's like it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, round one, I thought I was trying to see if like Charles was employing a strategy by going on his back and trying to bait him to get him in some sort of position. And it looked like he was trying to, but he couldn't find himself, or he couldn't find Islam Makhachev somewhere where he could put up a meaningful submission attempt. There was one towards the end of the first round, but it didn't look like too threatening. And then round two, Islam hit him with I think a right cross, and he fell. And I was like, oh, well, I'm used to this. Like he's just gonna wait for him down there. And what I was most impressed by, and I think what differentiates Islam versus the previous fighters Oliveira has fought, is when he went down into Charles Oliveira guard, he did it very carefully, methodically. He didn't just fall into it sloppy and try to go for the big shots. I forget how he fell into it, but I think he fell into it. He chose to go into a half guard so that he could get that I think it was like a side control or a side mount to set up that arm triangle.
And again, it was
that was his instinct to jump on it in that fashion was very impressive. And I was surprised by. I was surprised. I knew how good he was. I just had questions because he hadn't faced any big time opponents yet.
And that's exactly the thing I was about to touch on. It was the fact that the biggest question for Islam was going up against a champion who's faced everybody in the lightweight division, is considered exactly, and is considered the greatest lightweight, one of the greatest lightweights, if not the greatest lightweight that the UFC's ever had. Also, one of the greatest submission artists that the UFC has ever seen. I believe he has the most submissions of anybody, regardless of weight class. So this is a man who, again, Islam had a string of wins. What was it, like 10? Where he had submitted people?
I think 10, yeah.
So it was a situation where okay, we know what your preferred method of finishing is. Can you go do that against the greatest that we've ever seen? And it's the fact that he did it. And it wasn't just that he was, methodical, patient, but at the same time, smothering and aggressive. Again, that smart aggression that we talk about in fighters. But it's the fact that he made it seem easier than it should have been.
That's true. He really did. And I don't know. I was a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised to see Charles Oliveira actually tap out. I thought, he was gonna go to sleep before he was gonna tap out.
I know. I was like, I couldn't believe it when he tapped, because I was like, wait a minute, no, he's in trouble, yes, but
he's not gonna tap out. He's gonna. I saw him try to get out at first, and maybe he was just thinking in his head I could try to get out, or I could just be done with this now. I don't know. I've never been in that type of position. I would never know what it's like. Who knows what's going on in his head at the time.
Yeah, it's again. You don't. Again, we're not knocking him for tapping. No. Let's get it twisted.
I'm no Charles Oliveira. The second anyone like that has their arms around my neck, I'm gonna tap right away.
So no, I'm not knocking anybody for tapping in the UFC. That's not what we are saying at all. What we're simply saying is who Charles Oliveira is, and him having to tap out shows just how strong and how gifted Islam is. And with not nearly as much experience, this man has For some people say it was a crown that he was just destined to get. Others
Mhm.
say that he was just too young and he was just a prodigy that was just going to be, the quote unquote old dog is going to show him how it's really done. Whatever
Mhm.
way you looked at it, it showed that this brother is something different. The reason why, and now I'm starting to buy into the fact. First, I would, you could be hyped, and I got the grappling ability was incredible. But now I'm really buying into, oh, this man could be the next Khabib Nurmagomedov in all actuality, and it's the rise is incredible. Charles Oliveira will come back. That's not even a question. But with him right now out the way, the biggest match that we had to look forward to is Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, the current, in many people's eyes, pound for pound, best fighter in the entire world. In a unification bout for, well, what is it? Is he putting his title on the line too, Volkanovski?
Yeah, he's putting pound for pound, lightweight and featherweight are all up for grabs.
Gosh, that is that 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 like I'm not gonna lie, that's a super fight.
That is a huge fight.
That is a
I'm not sure how that works though. I'm not sure if Islam is gonna have to come down to 145 and fight there, or if he's gonna come up to 155
from,
for both belts on the line. I'm not sure how that works.
from what I understand, Volkanovski's moving up. So Volkanovski's moving up to 55.
Okay.
And if you saw him when in their face off in the ring,
Yeah, the
in
post.
the octagon, Volkanovski already looks like he's, you know, close to that weight. Not in
Oh
a bad
yeah,
way.
he was gonna be the replacement fight if either of them missed weight.
So
So
his body looks like it can more than handle the extra weight and the extra muscle. In fact, some people
no,
say
he's a huge featherweight.
he is that man is big.
He's a
That
big
man is
featherweight for sure.
huge.
Yeah,
Like it makes no sense. And couple that and see, he is a gifted athlete with all the technical abilities. And him going up against Islam
that's an interesting fight.
it's an incredibly interesting fight because now it's is it going to be a situation where Islam's one of the hardest people to take down to me in the entire UFC. Like bar none. This
Yeah,
man's it's just his lower body strength and just his not coupled with his incredible grappling IQ is phenomenal. But with him going up against Volkanovski, I think the uphill battle is going to be, can Volkanovski be able to stand strength for strength wise against somebody like Islam? Or is it going to be a situation where it's just going to be way too much for him to be able to handle?
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, did you watch the Brian Ortega fight with Alexander Volkanovski?
I believe I did. I was incredibly impressed. That was actually the first full fight I got to see of him. And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, now I see why they
Brian
call him the
Ortega had him twice with those submissions. I thought it was over for him, and he got out of them. And Brian Ortega is nothing to scoff at. He's one of the top submission artists up there with Oliveira.
Mm-hmm.
He's like one of those jiu-jitsu guys. But so it's tough to tell. I mean, I do think that Alexander Volkanovski's frame is a lot different than Charles Oliveira's. Charles Oliveira has long limbs, and Volkanovski has like shorter limbs, and he's definitely like just built differently, like a strong, bulkier type of guy is what it looks like to me. And I think that'll be interesting because I think Charles would be easier to keep on the ground rather than Volkanovski because they have different builds.
Mm-hmm. I feel that, but as a counter argument, with Islam being in this fight taller
That is
than
also true. Yeah.
Volkanovski, and with I believe with the reach advantage too,
Yep.
that could lead to like a whole nother plethora of grappling opportunities
Yeah,
that wasn't
exactly.
that has never been available to him
No, I
for the
mean, it could
majority
go
of his
that way
career.
too because he's just taller.
I don't think I've never seen a fight where Islam is the bigger man. Now we're seeing a fight where he is like both in height and weight, and
Yeah,
I would believe strength. The bigger guy who relies again. I'm not saying his game's only dictated on strength, but it is enhanced by how naturally strong he is. So could we see a situation where we may see Volkanovski legitimately get manhandled with how, you know,
bro. Dude.
blasphemous that may sound? Do you think we could actually see something like that happen?
Oh man, it is. It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. I mean, the last Volkanovski fight I saw was against Max Holloway, their third fight, and he was just assaulting that guy. It was a very one-sided fight. And he looked sharp. His technique, his
Mm,
timing, everything, like he was just looking a step ahead of Max Holloway. And I think, if he comes into the fight with that precision, it's gonna be a lot in his favor. It's too tough it's too tough for me to tell right now. I can't say definitively either one. It's tough to tell. I think I actually thought that Volkanovski would have been a good draw for Charles Oliveira too. I think that would have been a good fight
oh,
because if Oliveira beat Islam, that would make sense too.
no,
You
yeah, no. Again, complete sense
know?
and understandable. That would have been a phenomenal fight. And I'm glad you brought up Max Holloway versus Volkanovski because that is the other side of the spectrum. As good as Islam is grappling, Volkanovski took who was at one point in time considered the best striker
Yeah,
in the division,
yeah.
and who called himself the best boxer in the division. One of the greatest, highlights of him. Just who was it? Who was it that he just destroyed in the ring? He didn't knock him out, but he just went and just absolutely
Yeah.
like hard, stiff shots. He punched, he jabbed him to his side. He did what Roy Jones did in his career. Jabbed,
Forget
looked
who it
away,
was. I
and
know the moment you're
slipped.
talking about.
You know the fight I'm talking about.
Exact moment, yeah.
I can't think of the guy he was going up against. I don't know why.
Highlight like once every few weeks on my social media.
Yeah,
So
it's there. And again, and that's not him outclassing, some bum. Nah.
no,
I can't remember the name, but the
Max
brother who he
Holloway,
was
Max Holloway, he fights the top of the food chain, guys. He doesn't fight any like bottom of the barrel.
exactly. And for him, with his ability of striking, to be able to get whopped by Volkanovski.
He had a bad cut too, a real
It
deep
was,
cut
it
on
was
his
more than
back.
cuts. He was demoralized.
Yeah,
As much as he wanted to consistently keep, the fire and drive and keep wanting to fight, you saw it in his face that man, I'm just this brother's just eating me alive right now. And so for him to go and fight against Islam, we could see him, on the other side of the coin. If I'm saying Islam can potentially manhandle Volkanovski, we could see Volkanovski just absolutely pummel
we could. It's
Islam
really
on
hard
striking
to
it.
tell because if you look at it in that regard too, like you were saying earlier, Max Holloway was a lot taller and a lot longer reach than Volkanovski too.
Mhm.
They weighed about the same, and I think, but still, that is you have to take that into account.
Again, you're looking at the
Reach
situation.
is really, really important. Arms and legs.
It is reach and height are incredibly reach and height have their strengths and weaknesses depending on which side of the spectrum that you're on. Again, strengths and weaknesses in both sides. But if you look at track record just in fighting history, when you get somebody who is, if you're normally fighting tall all your life, fighting against tall all your life, and now you get in a situation where somebody's in figuratively and literally within your reach and
Mhm.
within your range, that opens up a whole new avenue of striking opportunities that weren't available. If you look at Mike Tyson, the way he fought taller fighters versus when he fought people like Peter McNeely and other fighters who, again, they were taller than him, but on the smaller spectrum of tall and closer to his height and reach, look at what he did. And it wasn't just because his technique was just so much out there. It was also who he was going up against allowed for opportunities that weren't available. And with Volkanovski, even though he's still the smaller guy, Islam, if you watch, well, of course you watched the fight with Charles Oliveira. We just talked about it. What that's a dumb question. But when you watch that fight, you saw him, landing on Charles Oliveira, who again is a good striker as well. Who I was really scared for was going to give him an unsuspecting knee.
Yeah.
He just put out the fight. I was like, the fact that he didn't let that happen, incredible in and of itself. But when you saw it and you saw he was punching, this man was willing to stand and bang.
He was.
He was willing to stay. Like he could have kept going to the ground, but when Charles Oliveira wanted to fight standing up, he didn't necessarily go and look for the takedown immediately after. The brother went and was catching him on a consistent basis.
Oh yeah, that's what got him down on the ground when he jumped into his guard. He hit him with like a right cross and
exactly. But again, while that was a good thing in that fight, in this fight that could be a bad thing because his willingness to want to stand and say, okay, if we're gonna go, we're gonna go. Could be a detriment because Volkanovski, as a striker, has some incredibly crisp, tight punches that will always beat. And again, this is why, as a person who watches boxing, his punches will beat Islam's punches if they're just throwing and they're just standing and banging. Because Volkanovski's technique as a striker, it is compact and straightforward, and everything is just like you would want a boxer to do, which is you strike fast, you strike down the middle, don't give a big tail to your strikes, and then you go right back. Allows for the ability not only to consistently have your hands back up to defend, but also the amount of punches you can throw in a given point in time is a lot quicker when the traveling time is, again, down and back immediately. Even in Islam's win, and when he knocked down and caught Oliveira in his championship winning fight, he was looping some of those shots. Some shots that in all actuality didn't need to be looped around. He could have gone straight down the middle. I'm not saying his technique is bad, but I do understand that Volkanovski's is a ton better. So how do you feel about that whole situation?
It could go either way. It's hard for me to tell right now. I think if I was going to bet on it, I would have to see what the what the lines are, and it might be one of those situations where like the odds are so good for Volkanovski, you should just bet on him, because we know how good he is, but it's tough to tell right now, man. I can't say definitively. I would probably have to like maybe watch a little bit more of their previous fights and think about it. But what do you think?
I mean, I'll predict it right now. I don't think it's not ending in decision. I know that for a fact.
It would make it to a decision either. No, I can say that. Yeah, I don't think it would go to the distance.
No, the way these two fight, these people are.
But something else is I just remembered I saw like in an interview with that Islam Makhachev was doing before the Charles Oliveira fight. He said that his plan was to defend the title a few times. I think he said 3 or 4 times, and then move up to welterweight. That was his plan.
Oh, now that would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting because welterweight is a little bit up in the air right now. With the Edwards Usman rematch.
Yep.
And then also what's going on with Khamzat Chimaev, and then the other people like Covington waiting for if Edwards wins again. So it is interesting to see, because what if we have that situation? Let's say hypothetically, oh wow, let's say hypothetically Islam beats Volkanovski, and he defends a few more times, and then he goes up to welterweight, and then he takes 3 belts.
this
That
this this
would
this
be the first ever.
that do you like that would be who
Like,
who was it?
crazy.
That'll be more than crazy. That'll be more than crazy. Who was it?
Oh yeah.
There was it Ezra Charles or was it Henry Armstrong? Well, I think it was Henry Armstrong. But I believe it was Henry Armstrong. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But I believe it was Henry Armstrong. Is a boxer who, like the UFC, when there was only one champ, and in every weight class, the man won 3 titles out of the 8 weight classes that were like around,
Wow.
and defended all 3. That's the thing. And so, if Islam Makhachev is able to become a 3-division champion and defend every belt, do you like we're talking about? I'm not gonna lie. If that does happen,
Talking about greatest of all time.
we're having that conversation.
Not to beat around the bush. Of course, we're talking about greatest.
We're having that conversation quicker than I think we've ever had that conversation with any UFC fighter.
You know, and that I think, yeah, you can't deny that. If that is what he went and did, you can't deny that. It's undeniable.
What man, that would be crazy if this brother went to middleweight.
That would be crazy. And, imagine he went to middleweight and he beat like honestly, whoever is the champion is like very deserving in my eyes or welterweight. My bad, welterweight. Everyone that could have that title. So from Covington, Edwards, Usman, Chimaev, I think they're all well deserving. And a win over any of those 4 men would be like,
it would be incredible.
Yeah.
It would be, now again with that we're hyping up again because this is like it's a frenzy right now of the possibilities that we could be seeing down the line. But if we back up a little bit, we do have to understand that the one thing about moving up in weight, if he does want to move up welterweight, does the power carry? That's one of the biggest things that in combat sports is harder,
I think. Yeah.
But see, you think that, but let's not forget. Again, I'll go back to Roy Jones Jr. Again, Henry Armstrong is a completely different animal, regardless of what sport you're talking about, to be able to go 3 weight classes and continue to stay dominant. That's a special breed. And
you're saying that as it goes up, it gets less?
And no, as it goes up, it gets more dangerous. Because if you look at Canelo Alvarez, the brother may have been stronger when he went to fight Dimitri Bivol at light heavyweight. He's above 168 pounds, which again, where I think he's best comfortable at. And while he had more power and was stronger, he couldn't slip. He couldn't move around the ring like he wanted to. Head movement was slow, and by round like 6, he wasn't able to actively, slip shots like we know he's able to do. So while you garner up one thing, everything else about your game can potentially get decreased. If you want another example, Deontay Wilder. The one thing that makes him so dominant as a boxer is not his technique. It'll never be his technique, because the brother as a technical boxer, he's one of the worst champions that I've ever seen.
Imagine if he wasn't, though. Imagine if he just had some technique. That'd be something scary.
Look, hey, quick plug, if you go watch my video on Wilder's comeback, I said that if he shows even an ounce of progression in his ability to be technical as a boxer, just hone the basics, get a grasp of the basics in a better way, he can be undisputed without question. He can knock out Usyk, Tyson, Fury, AJ, and anybody else in the heavyweight division, and can ring. I said that. I at minimum, I said he can get it. At best, I said he can ring just because of his athletic ability. But again, his athletic ability is best when it's at 115 to 110 pounds, that range. Or rather, 110 to 120. That is his sweet spot. When he tried to put on muscle for Tyson Fury, he got knocked out twice as opposed to when he fought him the first time, he fought him to a draw.
Mhm.
Because even though he's not technical, he doesn't have the best stamina. He's got better stamina to be able to carry that level of power because he's so slim. And when he tried to usurp that, oh, I couldn't put him out, so let me put even more muscle to make this right hand even more effective. Yeah, it was more effective. It knocked him down. What I believe a total of 3 times in their outcomes, which is incredible in their trilogy of fights. But it sacrificed any agility that he had left, a good bit of his speed that made his right hand so hard to actually evade at heavyweight, and made it so that now his already bad technique was even more
Exacerbated. Yeah, a
exactly.
lot you got to take into account when you're going up weight.
And so with that, we put that on Islam or even
Okay.
Volkanovski if he chooses to move up. Any one of them, if they go to welterweight, the question's going to be how much are they going to lose as opposed to what are they going to gain physically? Because they'll gain more strength and stability, but is it going to be stamina? Is that going to be a factor? Is it going to be that again? We're talking about the welterweight division. We're talking about Covington. We're talking about Jorge Masvidal. We're talking about Kamaru Usman. We're talking about Leon Edwards. We're talking about people that can crack. Can his chin take the power that's
The
going to
change in
be
his
coming?
own physique and stamina and just natural, that's a big question.
That's the thing, because as much as we can say he himself is going to be better, his body now has to take on the elevated impact of every little attack from
And
the opposing opponents.
being honest, if you're gonna go about doing that the right way, it's not like a quick change. To change your body the right way, and like to keep that stamina, keep that speed while having that extra weight and muscle. That's you can't. It's not like an overnight thing, and that's what leads to a lot of people doing PEDs too, is when they have to make those changes up or down.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right, and it's not in the problem with this is that it's not even about if you do it the right way. While it isn't in fact a factor, you can move up safely and effectively, but it's the fact that once you get in the ring, that's when stuff it hits everybody differently.
The
How they fare once they actually move up, even if leading up to everything, the camp was great, health is a-okay. When you actually get in that ring and you got to go through fight fatigue, not training fatigue, fight fatigue, where you're exactly where you're both mentally and physically getting wore down, it can be different, and it affects fighters to a point that you think you're going in fine, and boom, all of a sudden now you're winded by round 3 in a championship fight, and you're like, wait a minute, this wasn't like this in camp. It wasn't like this in camp at
Oh
all.
yeah, exactly.
And that's why I'm scared for like John Jones. He's moving up to heavyweight.
We got to talk about that another time. I've been keeping an eye on him. He is one of my favorite to watch, and that is real interesting. Him going up to heavyweight.
That's in fact, you know what? We'll say that for another show. If you can give your quick preview of what you want to say.
I follow him on Instagram, and oh boy, he looks like so since he's been suspended, he's had a lot of time to like I think what I was just telling you about, do this correctly.
Uh-huh.
It looks like he has put on that weight. I think slowing down a little bit is inevitable once you put on, all that weight, but it looks like he's still very agile, technical, and just his self in a bigger body, a little bit slower. We'll have to see. He doesn't post too much though. So like I don't know what he like last post I saw was like a few months ago. Who knows what he's looking like now. It's going to be interesting to see his comeback. I'm really excited for it.
It's gonna be incredibly interesting. And man, I would boy,
And
I
I'm
would,
sure who his opponent's going to be.
what?
That's another huge thing because there's no guarantee that Francis Ngannou's coming back. His contract is over.
No, wait a minute now. Wait a minute now. Don't bet on not seeing Jones versus Ngannou.
That would be one for the ages, man.
You,
I would love, dude. I would love to see that. Believe me, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. I don't think Francis Ngannou wants to sign another UFC contract. I think
he'll He might.
One fight right now is with him and Tyson Fury. I think that was
No, stop, stop, stop it. I'm sick of people bringing up Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is fighting Derek Chisora. After that, if Tyson Fury doesn't actually retire, he is going to fight Usyk. Or
you think there's no way he fights Ngannou?
there is not until he relinquishes his WB. Is it BO or BC? Until he relinquishes either the WBO or WBC belt. Until he gives up that title,
there's no way he fights
Ngannou. He is not fighting Francis Ngannou.
You think why? Wait, why is that?
Because of the fact that you got to understand, one, Undisputed is still on the horizon. And so you can still get a big payday from that. Two, AJ, Tyson Fury, max 9 figures or minimum 9-figure fight that can potentially happen. Undisputed fight between him and Usyk after he beats.
He doesn't need Francis Ngannou.
He doesn't need him.
Ngannou really wants to fight him, I think.
And it's because of the fact that Francis Ngannou is in that minute tier of MMA fighters and UFC fighters that have the exactly and that are a cross promotional drive.
You know, that's a huge thing with McGregor is whenever the build up to that Floyd fight, he made sure Dana White made sure to go with him so that whenever you see Conor, you see UFC.
And
it's sport even more, and it worked.
And it's because of the fact that while the UFC is gaining more popularity, or right now in the states, while the UFC is incredibly popular, I mean dumb popular. Overseas, they can sell, and they're popular overseas too, but it's not where boxing is. Boxing, Derek Chisora and Tyson Fury is happening for the third time. Tyson Fury has already knocked out this man twice. There's no good reason.
No real reason for it.
There's again, boxing politics have made this. If boxing politics was like the UFC, or rather they had just one president, and I've talked about this previously, but if they had just had one president like Dana White, no problem. Stuff is happening. And we're good. And they're fine. And the fights that we want to see are going to happen. But even though that's not the case, even though Derek Chisora has been knocked out and beaten by Tyson Fury 2 or 3 times already.
I want to make a 5-round series, man.
He can still get in that fight that nobody wants to see upwards of $20 million. And that's a fight nobody wants to see.
Yeah. Imagine a fight everyone wants to see.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's why I'm saying right now, Tyson Fury has made a bunch of noise and calling out everybody left, right, and center. Don't mark on him fighting Francis Ngannou. If more so, put your stock in that. Because despite what everybody wants to see, one, Francis Ngannou has no business in the boxing ring with Tyson Fury. He will die, and I don't care how strong he is. He will not last 3 rounds. Or if he does go by 3 rounds, he won't be able to continue by round 6 because of the fact that he will be winded. There has not been a UFC fighter that I've seen outside of Anderson Silva, that has actively been able to transition to boxing and be able to be conditioned enough to be able to actually produce.
I remember the Conor fight. Conor started gassing out about halfway through. That was when he started losing. He was doing great up until when he started losing.
And you got to understand, that was with Floyd Mayweather on the tail end of his career, where he is not. This man is not a big threat to knock you out. He does not put his weight on you. This is a defensive fighter.
Exactly.
And you got winded from him. Don't let somebody who's willing to come forward from round 1 get at you. Now because now once you get on the back burner, what's going to happen? You going to start backpedaling, and it's not going to be and it's going to be a thing where, hey, me as a boxer, I don't have to worry. I don't worry about kicks and strikes and all that stuff. You do. And like we saw with Tyron Woodley, some of those tendencies of how you were blocked can show up and I can exploit. And because of muscle memory, you're gonna do something that's actually gonna be a hindrance to you. So now you're trying to fight mentally, getting out of that frame of mind, while also if somebody's aggressive, now you're moving around a big ring where you can get clinched on and get leaned up on. And instead of you having a break or being able to go on the ground and compose yourself and kind of take a breather, you still got to stay up and keep on ducking.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's that's why I don't want to see that happen up until I see that Tyson Fury relinquishes the belt and is actively done. Because if he's still entertaining these fights with Usyk, AJ, or even a fourth fight with Wilder, if Wilder wins his title elimination series against Andy Ruiz, don't count on that happening. Don't count on that happening at all. Do not. Trust me, do not. But any other thoughts on John Jones or Francis Ngannou before we move on to the last topic of the day?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. Well, all I know is I want to see that fight, both of them, in terms of Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, and like we said previously, Volkanovski versus Makhachev.
And then what happens with Makhachev after?
Exactly. Or Volkanovski, whoever wins this fight is
on the line. There's a lot.
Not only for their immediate legacy, but what you can potentially accomplish. It's incredible. But to end off the show, and I wish we had more time to talk about this, because my goodness, I have some qualms. But Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva is happening tomorrow.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's happening. I believe they just had their final weigh-in. You see they're happening. Yeah. It's happening tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow. I believe it's happening tomorrow. Or we'll say coming up, just to be on the safe side. It's soon and present. It's happening. And Jake Paul 4-0, I believe, or 5-0, 4 knockouts, or 4-0 with 3 knockouts, whatever the case may be. Whatever. Undefeated. Anderson Silva 3-1 with, I believe, 2 knockouts. Now he's fully into the whole boxing regime, boxing scheme, as well as on a similar entry level in terms of when they got into the sport as Jake Paul. So what do you think is going to happen with this boxing event?
I think the age discrepancy is really notable. So like Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time, UFC, hands down. It's just I would have a hard time betting on him just because of how much older he is than Jake Paul. I mean, like I think he's a lot more skilled. I just think he's too old to be fighting someone that much younger. I would like to see Anderson Silva win. I don't love Jake Paul, but I don't know if I would bet on it.
Wait a minute. Are you you're? Oh wait, hold on. So so let's not even get in that Anderson Silva is the greatest striker in UFC history, in my estimation.
I agree.
Are you overglossing the fact that Anderson Silva, as a boxer, is legitimately adept? He has everything that Jake Paul does not have: legitimate technique, an adaptable game plan, length and speed, stamina. That's stamina. I don't even have to say anything else. Stamina. The brother can legitimately go for longer than 3 rounds without getting tired.
He still looks good, you think? Have you seen in his recent fights, yeah?
Are you kidding me? Yes, he does. This man he's throwing combinations. He's mixing up how his speed of attack. He's able to fight off the ropes. He will legitimately turn you around. If he's in trouble, he will slip. He will counter. He will step. He will do. Again, mind you, this is against competition of Jake Paul's level. He is a lot better. And as a fighting mind, Jake Paul's never fought somebody like Anderson Silva. Never.
Yeah.
Anderson Silva is so good that even though he's not a boxer, the tactics and the way he thinks it translates so well to boxing that if he went to being a boxer in his prime, he could have become a world champion easily.
So I
Easily.
put that on Silva, you think?
Easily. Yes.
Okay.
I've said again, I don't bet, but if I did, I've been saying I've bet on the opposing fighters for Jake Paul. Outside of the whole Nate Robinson mess.
Yeah.
That wasn't even a fight. That buddy didn't know what he was doing. Whoever trained him is utterly stupid. But I've been saying if somebody just did the basic stuff to Jake Paul would get knocked out. Tyron Woodley couldn't do it both times. He wasn't aggressive. He could have attacked. He had more in the tank on both occasions than Jake Paul. Because Jake Paul's technique the little technique that he had got sloppy by round one. Now, again, I'm not saying Jake Paul cannot fight. No, he's shown he has legitimate skill and is a legitimate threat in certain situations. And a certain situation is when he's throwing that right hand. Outside of that, his IQ coupled with, as opposed to Anderson Silva, his speed as opposed to Anderson Silva, his ring generalship, his ability to adapt, his defense, all of that is nothing compared to what Anderson Silva actually brings to the ring. And what I've seen him doing, not only in his last couple fights, but in training as well. The man is built to be a boxer. And this man, he's coming in all nice. And that's why he hasn't gotten a lot of fanfare. Because he's coming in nice. But he will kill Jake Paul. He can. And I'm banking on that he will.
I believe it.
It better happen. UFC world's going to be in fits if it don't. But my goodness, they're going to be in shambles. But this has been another episode of the Watch Report. I've been your host, Jean-Luc Welch. TN Commit, thank you for coming on. Love you so much. Can't wait to have you on again.
Here.
I'm glad you are. So leave a like on the video. Share with everybody you know. Subscribe to the channel. And we're going to head out of here. Peace and love. We out of here.